Good evening. My name is Michael Fenske, and in this video I will be interviewing both of my parents, Larry and Virleen Fenske. Larry and Virleen are a couple in their mid-70s who have been married for 55 years. They have a family of 8 children, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. For the past 42 years, they have lived in the same house in Lake Los Angeles. Remarkably, while living in this house, raising their 4 biological children, they became foster parents and had over 100 foster children come into their care. While doing foster care, Larry and Virleen would go on to adopt 4 children as their own. What is also interesting is that on top of their story taking care of children, Larry served several years as a volunteer fire captain. During his stint as a firefighter, he would not only help open a Los Angeles County fire station in Lake Los Angeles, but would become the first annual recipient of the Los Angeles County Volunteer of the Year Award. Even after their years of foster parenting and his volunteering as a fire captain, they have continued to serve at their church. The Fenskes represent a remarkable couple, which was why I thought to interview them and potentially see if I could learn anything new. Good afternoon. Thank you guys for joining me, Mr. Fenske, Mrs. Fenske. So I just wanted to start by asking a few questions and getting to know you guys a little bit. Tell me your name. You are
Lawrence Fenske Jr.
Lawrence Fenske Jr. And do you go by Lawrence or
Larry.
Larry? Okay. And you are
Virleen Fenske.
Virleen Fenske. Nice to meet you both. Now, the first question I wanted to ask you guys is, if you were at a party and you wanted people to know as much about your life as possible in those few minutes, what would you say? Describe your lives thus far.
Well, I was born into a family where there was a lot of turmoil and fighting, adultery, and some drinking. And when I graduated from high school, my parents moved to a different city, and we moved next door to a family that I got very close to.
And tell me, where are you from originally? What city were you born in?
Eugene, Oregon.
Eugene, Oregon. And what was the city you moved to?
Eugene. We had lived in Astoria, Oregon for
Okay.
a while and moved back to Eugene.
Okay.
They bought a house next door to a family who was a pastor and his family.
Mm-hmm.
And I got very close with them, and I found out what a real family was like, and so and through that relationship with that family, found Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. And so that I wanted a family that was just like theirs. Then my parents moved to California, and I met my husband Larry, and we met on a blind date, and we had a family, and it's been that way since.
Okay. And what about you?
I graduated from high school when I was 17. Went to work for the school district
Okay.
for a while.
What
and
school district?
Los Angeles Unified School District.
Okay. And where did you, I'm sorry, you also said you graduated at 17, what, high school?
Banning High School in Wilmington, California.
In Wilmington, California, okay.
And then later on I met Virleen. We got married. And then I later on joined the fire department. And we moved to Lancaster, California.
Okay. And so you said that you guys met and got married. Where did you guys meet?
Well, I went to work as a beauty operator and met a lady who went to a church that was the same kind of church as the family that I met and was so close to, and her husband was the basketball coach.
Okay.
And so they wanted to know if we wanted to go out on a blind date, and that was it. 10 months later, we were married.
Okay. And then you said that you moved to Lancaster, California. When did you move out to Lancaster?
1975.
1975, okay. My next question I wanted to ask is, what has brought you the greatest sense of meaning and purpose in life? And why does it matter that you were alive?
Well, the first greatest thing that's ever happened to me was when I found Jesus Christ as my personal Savior. And because of that, I wanted to fulfill His plan. And so I learned to pray and read the Bible, and that is what brought meaning to my life. And then I met my husband and had a family, and that was the next greatest.
Okay. And what about you?
At 12 years old, I received the Lord in the Daily Vacation Bible School, the back arena of a Nazarene church. And I met Virleen on a blind date. The coach called up and said, "We have a tournament Saturday, can you play?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Would you like to take a redhead out sometime?" And I said, "Okay." He called back a half hour later and said, "After we win the championship, you have a date."
Okay. And so I'm assuming that's what started your family right there. So suffice to say, it sounds like faith is important to both of you, as is probably the greatest sense of meaning in your life.
Yeah.
Faith.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then followed by your family, it seems like.
Yes.
What has brought you or brings you the most happiness in life?
Well, my relationship with the Lord and my family.
Okay, your family. Can you tell me a little bit more about that with your family?
Yes, we had, I was an only child,
Okay.
and I wanted a big family, and he wanted a big family too, so we started out with 4 birth children, and then we went into foster care, and we adopted 4 wonderful children, and so we ended up with 8,
Okay.
and that was really pretty much the most important thing to me in my life.
And what would you say the same, or?
I would say the same because we both left kids. While we had our kids, we also had 5 foster kids under the age of 5.
Okay.
A lot of them with medical problems and things that we could handle. So.
Okay. So just even something that's brought a lot of happiness is having a family and extending your home to foster children.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Tell me about a few major crossroad moments in your life, times when you went one direction or another, and if it made a large difference in terms of how your life turned out.
Well, the first crossroad for me was meeting the family that lived next door, because it certainly changed my life completely, because I found the Lord, and then I knew also through their life what kind of family I wanted my family to be like should I get married. I didn't know him at the time, but that made the biggest difference to start with. And then we married, and that of course is a big crossroad.
Yeah.
Having children, and probably the one thing is the death of one of our oldest son. And that was a crossroad where we had to really decide, do we trust God with this, or do you get mad at him? And we said, no, we've trusted him all our life, and we'll trust him with this too. So that was a crossroad for us to.
So it sounds like even making decisions that led up to meeting each other, saying yes to a blind date, seems like that was a crossroad moment that affected the next several decades.
That was quite a crossroad for my mother.
I can imagine.
But we hit it off right away, and within 10 months we were married.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what would you say to that? What were some major crossroads?
Crossroads. When I was working for the school district, I was falsely accused of carrying a gun on the job.
Okay.
And so then I left the school district and didn't have a job really to speak of. And 3 days later, I was offered a job close to home instead of driving so far.
Oh, wow.
And I quit coughing. I was coughing all the time. I quit coughing from working down below.
You were commuting from Lancaster to
Van Nuys.
to Van Nuys, California. Oh, that's quite a commute. And then you got a job closer to home.
At Edwards Air Force Base.
Edwards Air Force Base. And where is Edwards Air Force Base in relation to Lancaster?
It's about 15 miles north of Lancaster,
Okay. Okay.
so it's really close to home.
Okay. And so that was a considerable crossroad
Oh, yeah.
moment for you. Okay. So it sounds like meeting each other was a major crossroad for both of you. You know, even your work situation, that sounds like that was a major crossroad, and starting a family, even doing foster care. Another question that I wanted to ask is, what is the best advice you ever got from someone else about life? And did you take that advice?
Well, probably the best.
Advice I got was from my mother, being an only child. I was pretty close to the two of them. And my mother said to me when I got married that if we got in an argument, as all couples do, that she didn't want to know anything about it because I would forgive him and she would not. And so I never did tell her if we had any kind of altercation or any kind of a riff. I never called her, and I never spoke to her about it.
Okay. So that was some advice that you got from your mother that you actually took on yourself.
I had another person tell me that I needed to make my husband first in my life because he came first, and that we would have children together and we would raise them together, but those kids would grow up and go away, and that we would be together in the end. And if I didn't strengthen the relationship with my husband, I would end up with nothing at the end. And I took that advice very seriously.
So making sure, even in having a family, that your husband is still a priority and doesn't get put kind of as a back burner or something like that, maintaining that relationship. Okay. What about you? What was some of the best advice you ever got from someone?
Best advice I got was from my dad. He always said that he'd give us a chance to go to college if we'd like to, but he didn't care if we wanted to or not. But he said whatever we did, no matter what it was, if it was a trash man, be the best one in the city.
Okay. And was that advice you felt like you tried to keep?
Yep, that's what I've done.
Okay. And you said you worked for the Los Angeles Unified School District. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did?
I went in as a custodian, then I went into an apprenticeship as a glazer, which was a glass person, then I became a supervisor in the glass department for the district.
What do you wish you had learned sooner? If you could go back to when you were a young adult, and have a conversation with yourself, what would you tell that younger person about life?
I would tell them that the only foundation that you can build on is your faith. And that if you build on your faith, then everything else will fall into place.
Do you feel like she may have been receptive to that? How do you feel like she would have?
Before the family that I met, I always had a sense of wanting to know God, and I tried many different avenues to figure out what that would look like. And so I think I would have accepted it, except that I just never heard it. Nobody ever really.
Okay. And what about you? If you could go back and talk to a younger version of yourself, a young adult version of yourself, what would you communicate? What do you wish you'd learned?
I would say follow God's laws,
Okay.
follow the laws of the land,
Okay.
and you have peace.
Okay. So do you think a younger version of yourself would have been receptive to hearing that?
I think so.
I think it's kind of interesting hearing about the role faith has played in your life. It kind of rolls right into our next question, what role has spirituality played in your life?
It brings joy and peace, but also guidance. And when you don't know which way to go, or if something like the death of our son drops into your life, that you can trust God to help you get through it, which He did.
Okay. And what would you say?
On the same order, it's like when I left the school district, I didn't have a job and no money coming in, and we just prayed about it, and 3 days later I had a job, and he called 2 days later and said, you already got a raise, and I hadn't even got there yet.
So you feel like you would almost say that that was like an answer to prayer? Or?
It's a big answer to prayer.
Oh, a big answer to prayer. Okay. What do you feel like is the greatest fear at the end of life? How would you answer that question?
My fear is that I work in the fire department, that I don't want to die in an automobile accident. I'm allergic to pain.
You're allergic to pain.
And I would like to just go peacefully.
Okay. So your fear would be that you would like to have you wouldn't want to die in a painful manner.
Right.
Okay.
Well, me either.
I guess that's a lot of people's fear. Okay. And that kind of goes right into our next question. Now that you're older, how do you feel about mortality, about death? Not death in the abstract, the idea of death, but your death. Would you say that you're afraid of dying?
No, absolutely not. Because I have settled my heart with God, and I know where I'm going.
What about you?
When he knocks on the door, I'm going through it.
Okay. So here's another one I want to ask. So fill in the sentence. I wish I had.
I don't feel that I have missed anything in life. But I think, looking back, I wish I would have had more patience and compassion.
How would you answer that?
Mine would be, I've learned in the last few years that people that are disabled, I don't pay any attention to them at all, hardly at all. Now, you know, because I'm older, I've talked to them, taken care of a lot of them, and I wish I'd have done that earlier, known what to do.
Okay. Now that you have lived much of your life, what are you certain, or almost certain, matters a great deal if a person wants to find happiness and live a fulfilling life?
Only a foundation in faith is going to bring true happiness. But that also extends to love of family and developing those relationships, because that, in the end, your relationships with your family are what really count.
So what you feel like leads to happiness is, you said your faith, and then family. Faith and family. What about you?
I would say the same thing, faith and family.
Faith and family. Came out a lot of similar answers. No wonder you guys have made it 55 years. So in a similar vein, having lived much of your life, what are you certain or almost certain does not matter a great deal if a person wants to find happiness and live a fulfilling life? What do you wish you had paid less attention to?
Well, less happiness comes with striving for things and money and trying to climb the ladder, because all of that can disappear overnight, and family and faith is what is left. I think we didn't put a lot of emphasis on that, so I don't know what we would, what was the last part of that question?
The last part is, what do you wish you had paid less attention to?
Well, I would have paid less attention to the tiny things that don't matter when I was raising my kids, like whether their clothes were dirty or whether they were dirty or whether they ate certain things, because I know that it all balances out in the end. And I think for me, I was a far better mother for my last 4 children than I was for the first 4, because I learned that those things don't really matter. You can throw away the clothes and wash up the kids and let them have fun and really enjoy living, because you're only a kid once.
I don't think we try to keep up with the Joneses.
Okay.
Okay, that's one thing. And I think if you have a job that you're not happy at, if you're happy with your job, your whole life is different too.
So if you have a job that you enjoy being at, it can
Right.
be something that can even impact your being happy. Okay. One of the final questions that I have here is, if you could give only one sentence of advice to those younger than yourself on finding a happy and meaningful life, what one sentence would you pass on?
To base your entire life on your faith in Christ, and to let Him fill you with love and pour that love out to those around you.
I would think, can't do it in one sentence. I've dealt with people that are disabled, and I think people don't take the time to do that. It can be a small disability, it doesn't have to be a major disability, but people don't want to deal with it.
So it almost sounds like your sentence would be engage with those that maybe have a disability. Okay. I want to thank you both for coming today and answering some of the questions that I